My name is Amina. I'm 28 years old, and when I was only 8, I was given away as a bride. I know that sounds impossible to some of you, unreal, like something from a horror story. But for me, it was normal, expected, celebrated. They called it honor. I called it the end of my childhood. I grew up in a small village tucked into the dry belly of a northern Muslim region. No running water, no schools for girls past age 7, no dreams unless you counted the day you'd finally become a wife. I was the third daughter of 6. My father was a respected man in the community, stern, devout, and feared. My mother, quiet, obedient, and always looked down when she spoke. I remember her hands more than her face, cracked, calloused, always busy, always trembling. Our life revolved around the mosque. The call to prayer 5 times a day divided our lives into parts like slices of bread, measured, disciplined, unbending. We memorized the Quran by candlelight, sitting cross-legged on dirt floors, whispering Arabic we didn't understand, rocking back and forth like ghosts. We were taught that obedience was the highest form of love, especially obedience to your father, to your husband, to the imam, to Allah. I didn't know what love meant. Not really. What I knew was silence and survival. The morning my father told me I was to be married, I was helping my mother boil goat bones in a blackened pot. She didn't look up when he spoke. "Amina," he said, "you are of age now. Sheikh Ibrahim has chosen you." I dropped the spoon, not because I knew what it meant to be married, but because of how quiet my mother went. She didn't move. She didn't breathe. She just stared into the boiling water like it could swallow her whole. Sheikh Ibrahim was 42. He had 2 other wives. He led Friday prayers at the mosque and taught the Quran to the village boys. People said he was holy, a man of honor, a man of knowledge, and now he would be my husband. I was 8 years old. The preparations began that same day. Women came to our house to braid my hair and paint my hands with henna. They dressed me in red silk, too heavy for my tiny frame, and sang songs about purity and obedience and Allah's blessings. I sat there numb, not understanding why my stomach felt full of rocks, why my hands were shaking, why my mother cried when she thought I wasn't looking. The wedding night was a blur. Too much incense, too many strange faces, too many whispered congratulations. But for now, I want to say this. If you've ever felt like your voice didn't matter, if you've ever been told your body belonged to someone else, if you've ever cried alone in the dark asking God, "Do you see me?" Then maybe this story is for you. And I hope you listen. So many other girls still trapped in silence. Let others know they're not alone. Because I was 8 years old when I was taken, but it would take 20 more years for me to find my voice again, and when I did, it wasn't Allah who answered. It was Jesus. I never knew what a bride was supposed to feel, but I knew how it felt to be terrified. I was small, powerless the night he took me. I remember the door closing. That heavy wooden door, the way it echoed through the walls, through my chest, like it sealed me inside a prison I never chose. The women had finished singing. The incense still lingered. My hands were sticky with honey and rose oil. I sat on the edge of the bed, feet dangling, my red silk dress swallowing my body. Then he walked in. Sheikh Ibrahim, my husband. His eyes didn't soften when he saw me. His voice didn't reassure me. He just looked hungry and proud. Like he had acquired something rare, something expensive. Not a wife, a possession, a toy, a dollar. He said something about obedience, about Allah's will. He quoted a hadith. Even if her blood is still on the mat, if her husband calls, she must answer. I didn't understand until he reached for me. Then I did. Then I screamed. Then I begged. But in our world, a wife's cry is not a cry for help. It's just noise, and a child's fear is not a reason to stop. It's a sign of rebellion. What happened that night, I don't remember all of it. My mind shuts it out. But I remember the pain, the tearing, the shame, and the silence afterward. He slept. I bled. I didn't cry. Not after that. I learned fast. Don't cry. Don't ask questions. Don't flinch. Just be still. Just be good. In the morning, my mother came to see me. She brought warm milk and turmeric. She saw the blood. She didn't meet my eyes. "It is your honor now," she said. Then she left. I became a wife in that house, not a child, not a student, not a daughter, just a wife and a servant. I cooked. I cleaned. I washed his clothes. He would leave for the mosque and I would be alone. When he returned, I would stand up straight, cover my head, and wait for him to speak. He didn't ask about my day. He He didn't ask what I liked or feared or thought. He just took. When I turned 9, I started to withdraw into myself. When I turned 10, I stopped speaking unless spoken to. By 11, I was no longer surprised when he brought home another wife, a 16-year-old girl who looked at me with terror and confusion, the same way I had once looked at someone else, and I told her, "It's okay. Just stay quiet." I hated that I said it, but it was the only advice I knew. I was never taught that I mattered, only that I had to obey, that a woman's worth was in how much pain she could endure without complaining. I was praised for being silent, for being clean, for being modest, for covering my body and my heart and my soul until nothing of me remained. The Imam once gave a sermon on marriage. He said the Prophet's wife Aisha was only 6. Marriage is from Allah. To question it is to question His mercy. Mercy. They used that word so casually while girls like me died in silence. I started to wonder, if this is mercy, what does punishment look like? If this is God, why does He love the ones who break little girls? Why does He reward their violence? Why does He not see me? I remember one day, I saw a bird stuck in a net outside our courtyard. It flapped its wings wildly, screaming in a voice the only animals make. I watched it from the window and whispered, "I know how you feel," because I was a bird too, and they had clipped my wings and called it marriage. By 12, my body started to change, and the fear deepened, because I knew what came next. Babies. And I was right. But I'll tell you about that in the next part. For now, I just want to say this. If you are a woman who has been used, if you were told your pain was holy, if they convinced you that submission was your only purpose, please hear me. You are not a doll. You are not a slave. You are not a sacrifice. You are seen. You are loved. You are not forgotten. I was 13 years old when my body split open to bring life into the world, but before that life came, I almost died. The first time I felt something was wrong, I was in the kitchen grinding spices. I felt dizzy, my back ached, my stomach twisted. I tried to ignore it like I always did. Pain was normal. Bleeding was normal. Exhaustion was normal. What wasn't normal was speaking up, so I didn't. But the pain didn't stop. It got worse, day by day. Until one morning I collapsed in the courtyard, my hands still holding the pestle, blood dripping down my legs. That was how they found out I was pregnant. My husband barely looked at me. He didn't ask if I was afraid. He just told my mother to bring the midwives. "She's too young," my mother whispered. "She's not ready." He snapped. "She's a woman now. Allah has opened her womb." The months that followed were blurred by nausea, headaches, swelling. I remember vomiting every morning, lying on mats too thin for comfort. I was still cooking, still cleaning, still silent. My skin stretched too fast. My bones ached. My heart, I don't know. I think I stopped feeling anything by the 5th month. I just waited for pain or for death, whichever came first. Then the night came. The contractions started late. Just after Aisha prayers, they said it would be fast, that my hips were narrow, but I'd be fine. They lied. I screamed for hours. I bled too much. They told me not to make so much noise, that it wasn't becoming of a modest woman. But I couldn't stop. I thought I was dying. At one point, everything went black. And just before losing consciousness, I thought, is this how it ends? Bleeding on the floor. Nameless, voiceless, forgotten. But I woke up. Barely. The baby was alive. A girl. Small and blue. She didn't cry at first. They had to rub her chest for minutes. Then she whimpered, and they called it a blessing. "Allah has spared you," they said, but I didn't feel spared. I felt empty. I felt ruined. Like my body had been used, torn, and discarded. My husband visited the room once. He didn't hold the child. He didn't say my name. He just looked at me, eyes cold, and said, "Rest now. I will need you strong again soon." Then he left. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to my daughter's shallow breaths. And for the first time, I felt something rise in me I didn't recognize. Not fear, not shame, anger. What kind of God allows this? What kind of God calls this mercy? A girl forced to give birth before her voice even finishes changing. A child raising a child, a man praised while his wife bled. But I couldn't say these things out loud, so I whispered them to the night, to whatever sky hovered over that roof, to whatever deity might actually care. "Do you see me?" I asked. "If you're real, do you even see me?" Silence. Again. Months passed. I recovered slowly. The bleeding stopped, but the scars stayed. In my body, in my chest, in my spirit. I named my daughter Aisha. She had my eyes, my silence. I loved her, but I was afraid for her because I knew exactly what kind of world she was born into. A world where love is duty, where obedience is everything, where survival is not life, it's endurance. By the time I turned 14, my husband brought home another bride. She was 12. Her name was Samira. She didn't cry at the wedding. Neither did I. We sat together the next morning, drinking tea. She looked at me and whispered, "Will it hurt?" I didn't know what to say, so I just held her hand, and that silence said everything. I wanted to tell her that she would lose herself, that she would forget how to dream, that every time she looked in a mirror, she'd wonder who she was looking at, that even her prayers would begin to sound like someone else's voice. But I didn't say any of that, because I knew she would learn it anyway, and so I went on, living, breathing, but not alive. A doll with a pulse, a mother who was still a child, a believer who was starting to lose her belief. But something strange began happening in those quiet hours between feedings and chores, between silence and despair. A hunger started to grow, not for food, not even for freedom, but for the truth, for meaning, for a reason to exist beyond being used. I didn't know it yet, but that hunger was the whisper of God's voice. Not the God I had grown up fearing, but someone else, someone who hadn't spoken yet, but was about to. I didn't find God in a mosque. I didn't find him in the Quran. I found him in the dark, in a room with cracked walls and a broken heart. It started with a phone, a small, used Nokia with chipped edges and a screen scratched like desert glass. It wasn't supposed to be mine. It was my husband's, left on the table while he prayed Maghrib. I wasn't supposed to touch it, but I did. That night, I opened the browser and searched for nothing in particular, just something, anything beyond the echo chamber I'd lived in for 20 years. Something that didn't quote hadith to justify my scars. Something that didn't blame Allah when I bled. Something that didn't tell me, this is your test. Be grateful. I ended up on a strange website. It wasn't in Arabic. It wasn't a fatwa. It was a video. A woman's voice, soft, strong, pained. She said, I was born Muslim. I wore the hijab. I followed the rules. I prayed 5 times a day. I did everything right. I leaned closer, but I still felt hollow, used, forgotten. Then she whispered, and then Jesus met me in a dream. I paused the video, heart pounding. Jesus. That name was forbidden in our house. We were taught it was a curse word, a blasphemy, a lie told by Christians who had twisted the truth. But there was something in her voice, something real, something free. I watched the full video. Then another and another, testimonies, stories, women like me, men too, from Egypt, Pakistan, Somalia, Yemen. All of them had seen someone in white. All of them had cried out in pain. All of them had heard the same whisper, "You are mine." I didn't know what was happening to me, but I couldn't stop watching. Not during the day, only at night, when the children were asleep, when my husband was gone, when I was alone in the dark with my questions. One night, I searched, why do Muslims leave Islam? The answers hit me like lightning. Hadiths I had never heard before. Contradictions I had never dared to examine. Verses I had memorized as a child, now unraveling in my mind like threads pulled loose. I started to realize I had never chosen Islam. I had inherited it. I had obeyed it, but I had never believed it. Not really. I believed in God, but not the one who looked away when I screamed. Not the one who blessed men who broke children. Not the one who called my womb a vessel and my voice a threat. I believed in someone, but I didn't know his name yet. That night, I whispered for the first time, Jesus, if you're real, come to me. I expected silence like the silence I'd always known, but this time, I felt something. Not a sound, not a vision, just a feeling, a stillness, a quiet that wasn't empty, but full. Like someone had entered the room and was waiting for me to notice. It was around 3 a.m., the kind of quiet that feels sacred. Everything was still. No wind, no dogs barking, not even the whisper of a baby stirring. Just darkness and me. I had just finished reading a verse I didn't fully understand, but it shook me. I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he may die, yet shall he live. John chapters 11 verse 25. I read it again. Though he may die, I wondered what it meant to die before you were buried, because that's what I felt like. Alive on the outside, dead inside. I closed my eyes, and that's when I saw him. It wasn't like any dream I'd had before. It felt clearer, thicker, real. I was standing in a deep pit, muddy, dark, no way out. My arms were scraped, my dress was torn. I could smell the rot of the earth. I was trying to climb, but everything crumbled beneath my hands. And then, footsteps. Not loud, but steady. Software certain. I looked up, and there he was, a man in white, standing at the edge of the pit. He was glowing, but not like the sun. It wasn't blinding. It was warm, gentle, alive. His face was kind, strong, and his eyes knew me, not just recognized me. They knew everything. The screams, the blood, the shame, the nights I begged Allah to kill me, the moments I gave up. And still, his eyes were full of love. He reached down his hand. I hesitated. "Who are you?" I asked. He smiled, and though I didn't understand, my soul did. It leapt like a starving child being handed bread, like a prisoner hearing the key turn in the lock. I grabbed his hand. The moment I touched him, everything changed. The mud dried, the pit disappeared, and suddenly I was standing beside him, whole, clean, free. He looked at me and said, "You're not forgotten." Then he touched my heart with his hand. "You are loved." I woke up sobbing, so hard I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it had cracked open, like something that was buried had finally surfaced and screamed its way out of me. I sat up. Tears were soaking my hijab, my hands trembling, and for the first time in my life, I whispered, "Jesus." Just his name, nothing else. And in that moment, I felt peace, not safety, not answers, not perfection, just peace, like being wrapped in a blanket after years in the cold. The next morning, I made a decision. I downloaded the Bible app again, but this time, I didn't hide it. I opened it right there on the kitchen floor while my children played nearby, and I read out loud, "Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by your name. You are mine." I read that verse over and over because I had never been called by my name before. Not really. I had been called wife, burden, trouble, shame, but not Amina, and certainly not mine. That whole day, I felt different. I cooked like usual. I cleaned. I served tea, but something had changed in my heart. I was no longer searching for truth. I had seen him. Of course, I didn't tell anyone. I wasn't ready for that yet. But I started praying, not with Arabic phrases I didn't understand, but in whispers, simple ones. "Thank you. Don't leave me. Help me know you more." I still had fear. I knew the danger. If anyone found out, if anyone saw the Bible app, if my husband even heard me say the name Isa, I wouldn't survive. But I didn't care anymore. Because I had seen something greater than fear. I had touched the hand of someone who didn't want to own me, but save me. That night, I had no dream, but I slept peacefully for the first time in years, without flinching, without nightmares, without shame, just rest. Because I knew I wasn't alone anymore, but peace never lasts in the house of secrets. Because a few days later, my cousin walked in while I was reading the Bible, and everything exploded. It happened on a Wednesday. I remember the heat. The heavy smell of dust and sweat in the air. I was sitting in the corner of the living room, quietly reading from the Gospel of John on my phone. The children were asleep. The house was still. Then the door opened, and everything changed. My cousin Fatima stepped inside. She wasn't supposed to be there. She lived across the village, but her eyes told me she had come with purpose. She smiled when she saw me. Then her gaze dropped to my phone. She froze. "What are you reading?" I tilted the screen away. "Just something online," I mumbled. She snatched it from my hands before I could react. Her eyes widened. She saw the Bible app open to John 14. "I am the way, the truth, and the life." Her hand shook. Her face turned pale. "Amina?" she whispered. "What have you done?" I tried to take it back. "Fatima, please." She stepped away from me like I was contagious. "You've been reading the Injil. You're reading about Isa." I didn't deny it. For the first time, I wasn't ashamed, But her voice cracked as she screamed, "You've become a kafir, an apostate, a cursed woman." She ran out of the house, and within the hour, my family knew. My older brothers came first. I heard the shouting outside before I saw them. Then the door slammed open. They rushed in. Men, strong, angry, filled with shame and fear, masquerading as righteousness. "Where is she? Is it true? You've left Islam?" I stood in the center of the room, my back straight. I was trembling, but not hiding. I held my phone in my hand, still open to the gospel. "I'm reading the Bible," I said softly. "Yes, I believe in Jesus." That was all it took. The first slap knocked me to the floor. The second made my ears ring. By the third, I tasted blood. They dragged me by the hair into the courtyard. My children screamed from inside. My mother came running, trying to stop them, but she didn't deny what they were doing. She just wept. "What did you do to us?" she cried. "You've cursed us. You've brought the wrath of Allah on our house." I looked at her through swollen eyes and said, "No, Mama, I found peace." She slapped me herself then, harder than I thought she could. My husband wasn't home that day, but he didn't need to be. My family took over. They tied my hands with cloth. They threw me in the back room and they locked the door. 3 days without food, without light, without my children. I heard them crying once, then silence. The room was hot. The air was thick. I could barely breathe. On the second night, someone shoved a plate of bread and water under the door. On the third, the Imam came. I heard his voice before I saw him. He recited verses from the Quran. He stood outside the room and shouted, "You are possessed by a jinn. That is the only explanation. You will be purified, or you will be destroyed." I didn't reply, not because I agreed, but because I had no strength left. That night, I thought I would die, and maybe part of me wanted to, but then I remembered the dream, the hand that pulled me from the pit, the voice that said, "You are loved." So I crawled to the corner of the room and I whispered, "Jesus, I don't know where you are. I don't know if I'm going to live, but please, please don't leave me." A breeze moved through the cracks in the wall, and for a moment, I felt it again. That peace, that presence, I can't explain it, but it was real. Even in the middle of that prison, he was with me. On the morning of the 4th day, they opened the door. My aunt stood there with a scarf and a matchbox. She said, "If you speak that name again, we will burn you. Do you hear me?" I nodded, but not in agreement, only to live another day, because inside, I had already decided I would never deny him. That night, I ran. With the help of someone I can't name, even now for their safety, I escaped through the window, my feet bare, my face bruised, but my soul clinging to something bigger than fear. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't have money. I didn't even take my children. They were still locked in the other room. But I ran, because if I stayed, I wouldn't survive. And as I ran, I whispered again and again, "Jesus, help me. I choose you." I didn't know what would happen next, but I had made my choice. Bloody, beaten, terrified, but unshaken, because I had seen the truth, and I would never let go. I don't remember how far I ran that night. All I remember is the sound of my own breathing, the blood dripping from my nose, and the prayer I kept whispering with every step. "Jesus, don't leave me." I was half conscious when I stumbled into the alley behind the tailor's shop. I collapsed behind a stack of crates, curled into myself, and passed out. I was certain I would die there, but God had other plans. When I opened my eyes, it was morning. The sun was rising. The sky was pink and bruised, like my face, and standing over me was Miriam. I had met her once before, months earlier, when I sold her bread at the market. She was quiet, kind. I didn't know she was a Christian, but that day, she became my lifeline. She didn't ask questions. She just helped me up, wrapped her arm around me, and took me to her home, a small house tucked at the edge of the city. She cleaned my wounds in silence. I winced as she dabbed a cloth to my mouth. "What did they do to you?" she finally asked. I couldn't speak. I just shook my head. But she looked in my eyes and said, "You've seen him, haven't you?" I froze. "Jesus," she said, and I broke. I wept like a child. All the strength I had used to survive collapsed into her lap. I stayed with Miriam for 3 days. She gave me food, a place to sleep, and for the first time in my life, peace. She didn't lecture me. She didn't pressure me. She just sat beside me, reading from a small paper Bible in a whisper. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Psalm 147 and verse 3. That verse stayed with me because my heart was broken, and yet I was still breathing. On the fourth night, she asked me gently, "Do you believe he's the Son of God?" I looked down. My hands were trembling. Then I nodded. "Yes," I whispered, "I do." "Do you want to give him your life?" she asked. "I already have," I said. "Then let's pray," she smiled. I knelt on the floor with her, my knees still scraped, my soul still raw, and I said words I didn't know I needed to say. "Jesus, I believe you are the Son of God. I believe you died for me. I believe you love me. I surrender everything I have, even if I lose my name, even if I lose my life. I want to follow you." When I finished, I felt something shift. It wasn't loud, but it was deep, like the chains around my soul had fallen off without making a sound. A few days later, she took me to a gathering. It wasn't a church, not like you'd picture, just a room, 4 walls, 10 people, a baby asleep on a mat, a woman singing in a whisper, a man opening a torn Bible. But the Spirit of God was there. You could feel him, thick, real. They welcomed me like family. They didn't stare at my scars. They didn't flinch at my story. They just prayed over me, loved me, embraced me. At the end of the gathering, Miriam stood beside me. She looked into my eyes. "Are you ready to be baptized?" I swallowed hard and nodded. "Yes," I said. We went to the back. There was a tub filled with water. One of the women began singing softly. The others gathered around. I stepped in slowly, my feet trembling, my eyes wet. The man leading the group said, "Amina, based on your confession of faith, we baptize you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit." Then they lowered me under. And in that moment, I died. Not physically, but spiritually. The old Amina, the abused child, the voiceless bride, the shamed woman, she was gone. And when I came up out of the water, I was new. I wept, loud, ugly, holy, because for the first time, I wasn't covered in blood from my husband's hand. I wasn't covered in blood from childbirth. I wasn't covered in blood from my brother's fists. I was covered in the blood of Jesus, and it washed me clean. That night, I couldn't sleep, not from fear, but from joy. Joy so strange, it almost hurt. I stared at the ceiling and whispered, "I am yours forever." But choosing Christ didn't erase the danger, it increased it. Because in the eyes of my family, I was now more than rebellious. I was dead. They held a funeral for me, no coffin, nobody, just my name, spoken like a curse. I heard about it weeks later. A cousin sent word through a whispering chain of women at the market. "Your family declared you dead." They held a janazah prayer. "Your name is no longer spoken in the house." I didn't cry. Not that day. I had already buried that name myself. Because they didn't just erase my name from the family, they erased it from the world they built around me, in their eyes. I was no longer Amina bin Yusuf. I was no longer a daughter, no longer a wife, no longer a sister. I was murtada, apostate, dead. But God called me something different. The day I found out, I was sitting in Mariam's house helping prepare food for our small church gathering. I had been reading from the Gospel of Matthew, still trying to memorize verses, still amazed that I was allowed to speak with the Lord directly when she handed me a small paper note. "It's from someone who heard the news," she said. I unfolded it slowly. My name was crossed out, red ink, bold, and beneath it, one sentence. "She is no longer one of us. She is dead." I held that note in my lap, stared at it, not angry, not even shocked, just numb. But then Miriam leaned close and whispered, "They may have declared you dead." She opened her Bible, flipped to Romans 8, and pointed. "But the Spirit himself testifies with our spirit that we are God's children." She looked at me. "You are his daughter now. That name can never be taken away." That night, I prayed like I never had before, not in fear, not in desperation, but in joy, in a relationship. "Father," I said for the first time, "thank you for calling me yours." The next day, I asked Miriam if I could take a new name, not legally, but spiritually. She smiled. "What name do you want?" I said, "Abigail. It means father's joy." She hugged me tight. And that's what I've been ever since. Amina is gone, not forgotten, but buried. And in her place stands Abigail, daughter of the Most High. Life didn't become easy after that, but it became full of love, of light, of belonging. At our gatherings, I found women like me. Some were divorced, some abused, some ex-Muslims, some just broken, and all of us redeemed. One woman changed me forever. Her name was Layla. She was older than me, a widow, former imam's wife. She had scars on her arms, old cigarette burns from when she refused to cover her face. She sat with me one night, just the two of us. The room was dim, the tea was warm. She looked me in the eyes and said, "You're not just saved, you're restored." I asked her, "What do you mean?" She said, "God doesn't just rescue the drowning, He teaches them to dance on water." I never forgot that, because for the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was learning to live. I started reading more, memorizing verses, praying aloud, even teaching other women in secret how to use the Bible app safely. And every night before I slept, I'd whisper to God, "I'm yours." And every night, I'd feel Him whisper back, "And you are mine." Sometimes I thought about my children. I missed them so much, it hurt. But I had peace because I knew if God could rescue me from the grave, He could rescue them too. And I waited, and I trusted, because I wasn't alone anymore. They declared me dead, but Jesus, He called me daughter. Healing didn't happen all at once. It came in pieces, like light breaking through cracks in a wall. One morning at a time, one verse at a time, one prayer through tears at a time. I still have the scars on my body, and deeper still, on my heart. Sometimes I'd wake in the middle of the night, in a cold sweat, clutching my blanket, unable to breathe. Flashbacks would hit me like waves. My husband's voice, my mother's hands, my daughter's first cry. Sometimes I felt like I was back in that locked room again, even though I was free. I remember one night I was curled up on the floor shaking. Mariam found me. She didn't say anything. She just sat beside me, opened her Bible, and read softly. "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." Psalm 23, verse 4. I sobbed because I had walked through that valley, and I was still walking through parts of it, but now, I wasn't walking alone. There were days I questioned my worth. How could God love someone like me? Someone who doubted, someone who disobeyed, someone who bled and ran and failed so many times. But the Word answered me. "See, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands." Isaiah chapter 49 and verse 16. Jesus bore scars too. Mine didn't scare Him. He welcomed them because He knew what it cost to free me. And He never once looked away. I started journaling my story. At first, just in a notebook, then one day, I recorded a short voice memo. Just a few words. "I'm free. I belong to Jesus now." And I cried listening to it because I heard my own voice for the first time. Not the voice of a wife, or a daughter, or a prisoner, but a daughter of God, whole, loved, seen. I joined a small group of women who met weekly in secret. We sang worship songs softly. We studied scripture. We laughed. We healed. Together. And slowly, the scars began to change. They didn't disappear, but they became part of the testimony, not the wound, but the evidence of the healer. Yes, I still carry the scars, but they no longer define me. They remind me that I've been rescued, that I've been restored, that I've been reborn. I don't hide them anymore, because they tell the story of a God who walks into the fire and carries His daughters out. If you're still listening, if you've listened this far, thank you. Thank you for hearing my voice, for hearing my story. But this story isn't just mine. It could be yours too. You may not have been married at 8. You may not have bled in childbirth at 13. You may not have been beaten for saying the name Jesus, but maybe you've felt silenced, forgotten, used. Maybe religion crushed you. Maybe family controlled you. Maybe shame followed you like a shadow you couldn't outrun. If that's you, hear me now. There is hope. There is healing. There is freedom, not in a system, not in a ritual, not in covering your pain and calling it piety, but in a person, in Jesus. I found him in the darkness, or rather, he found me in a pit of blood and shame, in the silence of my prison, in the moment I thought I would die. He came, he lifted me, and he called me by name. I was not cursed, I was not filthy, I was not forgotten, I was chosen. Today I share my story, not because it's easy, but because someone out there is where I once was, terrified, searching, trapped, and I want you to know, you are not alone. Jesus is real. He's not a prophet with a sword. He's a savior with scars. Scars he took for you. Scars he took for me. And his arms are still open if you're still here, if something stirred you while listening. Please don't scroll away. Take a moment, ask him. Whisper his name. Jesus, if you're real, come to me. He will, I promise, and if this story touched you, please share it. Comment, not for me, but for every girl like me still trapped in silence, for every daughter still bleeding in the dark, for every soul still crying out for a father's love, because I was given to marriage at 8. I almost died giving birth. I was declared dead by my family. But today, I live for him. And if he can do it for me, he can do it for you. You are not forgotten. You are loved. Abigail, once Amina.